Good evening. Today is March 5th, 2016, and this is the 2016 annual town meeting of the town of Spencer. My name is Peter Adams. I'm your town moderator. I'm advised that we have a quorum, and I call the meeting to order. Waiving the reading and return of the warrant and noting for the record that it has been served as required by law. For those of you who are willing and able, please rise and join your fellow town meeting members in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence and our national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sandra Fritz. Thank you. It's kindly consented to get me off the hook so I don't have to sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Tonight we will make history in the conduct of our normal affairs as we exercise our right of self-determination to set the affairs of our government by consensus as a free and equal people in this, the 263rd year of our existence as a body politic. Beyond the town of Spencer, we are engaged in a great quadrennial contest to determine our next president. Day after day, we endure the barrage of candidates' untenable but expected promises of future prosperity and grandeur. Sadly, though, much of the current political climate generated by candidates for our highest office conflates good government with passion and intolerance, a dangerous combination and existential threat to our democratic society. In the midst of the deluge of advertisements, rallies, and meaningless sound bites, we can lose sight of a truth that this country was founded on, that acquiescence to any extent by the governed to the implementation of intolerance by the governors inevitably erodes not just the rights of the oppressed, but also the freedom of all citizens. We can forget that good government never condones intolerance. We do not have to look far in our history to find extreme instances where societies mindlessly acquiesce to intolerance. On this date, 71 years ago, May 5th, 1945, an ugly chapter of intolerance ended when the last massive concentration camp of the Third Reich, Mauthausen-Gusen, was liberated by the Allies. Over the course of 8 years, thousands upon thousands of political objectors, intelligentsia, socialists, communists, Romani, Auschwitz-Birkenau transplants, the incarnables of the Reich were subjected to slave labor and an intentional practice of extermination through labor. Begun in 1938, Mauthausen was one of the first massive concentration camps of the German Reich. It was constructed partially from funds stolen from the prisoners and gradually expanded to over 100 subcamps of forced labor. Those imprisoned were subjected to starvation, coerced execution of each other, execution of the weakened laborers by means of lethal injection, gas chambers, and hypothermia. Records were deliberately destroyed or forged by the overseers. Historians estimate that between 120,000 and 320,000 prisoners died there. We learn important lessons from the Mauthausens of history, that intolerance is a cancer in the body politic, which can lead to extreme and unimaginable consequences, that good government deters such injustice, and that good government begins at home. If we listen intently, debate thoughtfully, and govern fairly, we will prosper as a free people. Every act of governance, from this town meeting to the voting booths on election day, must be a check against the oppression of any intolerance. If we act impetuously, abandon compassion, and govern with prejudice, then acts of governance are but mere bricks in a wall of intolerance which blocks the light of freedom rather than being the solid pavers in the path of liberty. Govern wisely, and we build a tolerant path for our children and our grandchildren to follow, one that does not lead to another Mauthausen concentration camp. We give thanks to the Spencer Cable Access for their continued support of your right to know through telecast of these governmental meetings. On the stage, I'll introduce the people for you. On stage left is the Select Board. We have Chairman Gary Woodbury, Vice Chair John Stevens, and Member Chris Woodbury. To the rear is Adam Gaudette, our Town Manager, our Town Administrator, and Stanley Weinberg, Town Council. Finance committees are on stage right, and the Chair, Mary Brainey, will introduce them to you, please.
Good evening. To my left, we have Paul McLaughlin, who's Vice Chair, Tom Parker, Bill Wall, and immediately behind me, Chris Kendall. Beside him, Chris Bowen and Robin Joyce.
Lastly, seated to my left is my town meeting colleague and friend, Laura Torti. Ground rules. Questions on parliamentary procedure are decided through guidance from this little blue book, which is called the Town Meeting Time, a handbook of parliamentary law. That's a bylaw in the town. On articles, the articles will be summarized by myself. The motion will be read. Finance Committee recommendation will be heard, and then any moving party will speak, followed by any other speaker. To be recognized, just call out Mr. Moderator or get my attention. The ground rules on addressing the meeting: you must use the microphone in the front, you must identify yourself and give your home address, and keep it simple. And civil also. Amending an article. If you want to amend an article, it must be in writing and it must be seconded. We have forms for you if you want to amend an article, and we'll help you with that. Thank you for attending as we continue this purest form of democracy. And please remember that the second phase of the annual town meeting, the town elections, will be held on Tuesday, May 10th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those are new hours this year. It's going to give a lot of you a chance to vote before you go to work. You have budget material in the warrant made available at your check-in. When the budget articles are called, I will not read through any line item. If you have questions, please raise your hand. The town administrator would be happy to answer any questions. The Finance Committee has gone through great lengths to make this material available and to consider it and make its recommendations to you. and there have been cable access programs and lots of things to make it available to you, including on online presentation. If you have any questions on any line item, again, just note you want to hold a line for discussion, and we'll come back to it, and we'll get through the warrant that way. That being said, I will turn this meeting over to the chair of the Select Board for presentations. State your point of order.
Kurt Nordquist, I'm just calling a point of order here. I have the zoning bylaws, and the first thing it says Article 6. I looked at Article 6, and that's about the Spencer East Brookfield. Could you tell me if this is it's just the wrong article number or what on Article?
Well, we'll come to that when we get to that, but I believe that's probably the article in the bylaw itself, Mr. Nordquist.
Well, it says Article 6, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah.
And Article 6 is...
Don't be confused. That refers to the zoning bylaw.
Well, I know that, but, okay. I just want to bring that to your order. Thank you.
Mr. Woodbury.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. It's kind of a rough night. If I could, where do we put it? If I could have Nancy Andrew and the family come up here, please. Every year we give out a meritorious award. This year we're pleased to give it to Nancy Andrews. I can't think of anybody who's been in town a long time that wouldn't know who Nancy is. Very involved with the, 4-H, Spencer Fair forever that I can remember. And what we try to do is we try to pick somebody who's good for the community. I can't think of a better person right now than Nancy, and I'll tell you a little story because when I was younger, I'm going to go back about 50 years. Somewhere around 50 years ago, I used to show cows at Spencer Fair. Long before the new barns were up, you used to have the old barns, and you used to bring your cows in. They were in front of you. The hay was in the middle, and you slept there. Me being me, decided one night I'm going to sneak out of there. Guess what? Okay? So that was my first meeting with Nancy, and it's been a good relationship since. So it's with great pleasure that I give to you, Nancy, the Meritorious Award for Public Service Award for all the years that you gave to 4-H and to the town. You deserve it, baby. Yeah, right. Hey, you used to catch me. I thought it was good.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Be proud of her. We'll let Nancy get back a little bit. As you know, on the back of the hall here, we have a few plaques up there, and it's our Leadership Award. If I could, I would like the moderator to please come down and join us. Do you get that? Do you get that? 'Cause it's written on there. So just be ready, John, okay? Yeah, we're going to read that when we get over there. So as you all know, or you should know, this is Peter's last meeting. A little bit of history behind this young gentleman that goes back a few years. A couple years, Pete?
Yeah, a couple.
So tonight, Peter is getting inducted into the hall, Legion Hall, and we're real proud of that. So a little history behind it. If you want to come over, Pete. Can you hear me? We'll speak up a little bit. And this is a little history on what Peter's done for the town.
Peter J. Adams, born March 31st, 1947. Parents?
Town of Spencer. Town Council, 1977 to 1982. Bylaw Revision Committee, 1978 to 1980. School Committee, 1981. Finance Committee, 1997 to 1998. Town Manager Study Committee, 1997. Board of Selectmen, 2001 to 2007. 250th Anniversary Committee, 2003. Capital Improvement Planning Committee, 2004 to 2007. Soldier Citizen Monument Committee, 2006 to 2007. Town Moderator, 2009 to 2016. Veterans Memorial Isaac Crouch Park Advisory Committee, 2014 to 2015. And we ran out of space, it appears. Please be seated. We have one more item to present to Peter. We'll just Peter, in all your years as town moderator, you've been a shining defender of democracy, law, and of course parliamentary rules. You've ensured order, civility, even-handedness, and dignity in all our proceedings. But from your stories that you open every town meeting with, we also know there's something else you are, and that's a lover of history, of the language, and of course the written word. So we have a special token of this community's appreciation for you tonight. It's a book, Peter, but I have a lot of confidence that this will not sit on a shelf, because the name of this book, this beautifully bound book, is 100 Documents That Changed the World. I have a feeling you'll be reading this and flipping through this frequently. So with special appreciation, added appreciation for your years of service, we are blessed and fortunate to have you in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank all of you so much.
Now you're in charge.
I think we may have to have a discussion with my wife when I get home. I think she was a co-conspirator here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the kindness that you people have extended to me over many, many years here. And long live the town of Spencer, and long live the town meeting. Article 1. Article 1 is a motion presented to clean up various affairs from the prior fiscal for the current fiscal year payable from free cash. It involves a series of transfers to cover legal expenses, salaries, and things where we have shortfalls. Mr. Stevens.
Are you going to read the article, or?
No, we're not going to read the article. I can tell you this, that the article, the motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 1 as printed in the warrant. Requires a majority vote. You are making the motion, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Chris Woodbury is seconded. And now we're back on track. The Finance Committee recommendation is, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Mr. Stevens, the floor is yours.
This is a familiar first step in our proceedings at town meeting. We have a number of items which we have to bring some balance to for 2016. If there are specific questions about any of these line items, I'll defer to the town moderator for more detail. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? And the ayes have it. Motion carries. Article 2. Article 2 is the annual consent article, which we present to you, where we group routine and non-controversial articles not necessarily requiring discussion or independent votes as separate articles. It basically is the same thing from year to year. We fund revolving accounts. Okay. That's Article 3. We're going to take Article 3 first because I've been talking about it. So we are to receive the recommendations of the town offices and committees, and to fund the various boards in the town: the Planning Board, the Sugden Block, the Office of Development and Inspectional Services, Parks and Recreation, Celebration Revolving, Council on Aging, Stormwater Management Revolving Fund. We also authorized the town officials to appropriate the money received under Chapter 90, which is the State Highway Fund, for use in improvement to our highways. We authorized the Select Board to receive various grants. We authorized fire code violations to go into a fund controlled by the fire chief. And we authorized 50% of all monies which are collected on chapter fund reimbursements. These are lands which are taxed at a lower rate because they're agricultural, horticultural, or forest use lands, to go into the land acquisition stabilization account. We authorized the treasurer to undertake certain agreements with banks to provide funds to keep the town running while she's waiting for funds to come in the tax collection. And finally, we authorized the Select Board to negotiate contracts in behalf of the town. Questions or comments on Article 3 taken out of order? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? And that carries by a unanimous vote. Now Article 2. Article 2 is an article to see if the town will appropriate $1,000 for sick leave buyback fund account, and this is going to be handled from free cash. This covers an overrun we had during the year because of retirements. The motion I have is made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Woodbury. It requires a majority vote. The motion is I move to waive reading and approve Article 2 as printed in the warrant. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
We have approval. Are there questions on that $1,000 transfer from free cash? Seeing none, please raise your cards if you are in favor. Thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. That carries by a unanimous vote. Article 4. Article 4 is an article to set the salaries of elected officials: the Board of Selectmen, the Moderator, Board of Assessors, the Town Treasurer Collector, Town Clerk, Water Commissioners, the Sewer Commissioners, and the Board of Health, and those amounts are set forth in your book. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 4 as printed in the warrant. The motion is by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. Requires a majority vote. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Questions or comments on setting the salaries of elected officials? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? The chair declares that carried by unanimous vote. Article 5. Article 5 is 2 or 3 pages long, and this we adopt every year. This sets the personnel bylaw pay schedule for non-union workers within the town. What happens is that every year, whatever is negotiated with the unions, a similar percentage is carried over to people that aren't covered by union contracts. And these are mostly part-time folks who get the benefit of this. So the schedule is there. The motion is to approve the figures which appear in the book. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 5 as printed in the warrant. It requires a majority vote. Motion is by Mr. Stevens and seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none, and we'll declare that as a unanimous vote in favor Article 6. Article 6 is the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District budget for the coming fiscal year. It requests the appropriation of $6,141,000 odd as a minimum local contribution by the town to the schools. It requests about $1,203,000 for transportation, $238,175 for debt service and capital assessments, and $495,354 as an additional local assessment. These are the figures which have been presented to the town by the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 6 as printed in the warrant. It requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Gary Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval of Article 6, and I'd like to remind everyone that many of the numbers in here are set at the state level. The minimum local contribution, for example, is set by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, just for your information.
Mr. Chris Woodbury, you have the floor.
This is just our assessment for the fiscal year 2017 from the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. Any questions? I defer to the chair of that board.
Questions or comments? Mr. Hayes, Chairman of the School Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For the last couple of years, I've come here to report the financial status of the regional school district, and each year I've said that we still had more work to do and we hadn't reached the goals that we were striving for. I'm happy tonight to inform you that we have finally reached the financial solvency that we've been pushing the district towards for the past 3 years. In the budget that's before you tonight, it's a total of $24,487,289, about $250,000 over what the budget was last year. Right before passage of this budget by the committee, we were some $1.1 million apart with administration and the school committee, which just about gave Adam Gaudette and the selectmen a heart attack. But through cooperation and work between the superintendent, her staff, and the school committee, we were able to come to agreements as to how we could apply funds into the budget and to get the budget to a level where it would have no impact at all on the local services and allow the community to go forward with the plans that they currently have in the booklet tonight. The exciting part about what has finally been put together is it takes care of capital needs as well as needs of the students. In this year's budget, we will spend some $355,000 for the purchase of new technology. This technology will help our teaching staff to increase the learning opportunities of students in the classroom and bring us up to the same level that other school districts have that we don't have, that we're currently trying to compete with. Along with that, we are purchasing some $75,000 worth of software, and we have a little over $300,000 going towards curriculum renewal. The largest part of that is for the purchase of textbooks. The library at the high school is being completely restaffed to put us in position for when we have our review to try to get off from probation from the high school with our accreditation. And from a capital standpoint, we are going to be able to replace the roof at David Prouty High School. We're going to be able to install security systems through all the school buildings in the district, some of which still don't have security cameras. And we're going to be able to start the remediation process for the asbestos problem at the high school. This has been a long-term issue that has confronted the district for probably some 15 years, if not longer, since it came to light. We expect to have that process completed over the summer while the students are out of school. In addition to that, we're replacing all of the ceiling tiles throughout the school. There's been quite a to-do about that because some of them have asbestos materials in them. So the good part about the budget tonight, it takes care of both the students, the teachers, and the capital items that we've been confronted with that have been remiss as far as being addressed for the past 8 or 10 years. So I look forward to your support for that budget. I'd like to turn it over now to Superintendent Crow, who will review with you how we will move forward over the next 3 years in our attempt to bring academic rigor and excellence back to the district.
Superintendent Crowe, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. This budget does indeed represent the district's commitment to providing high-quality educational programs that are clearly focused on preparing students for both college and career. The FY17 budget attempts to maintain a balance between the needs and the increasing costs while establishing a very clear vision for rebuilding high-quality programs. This budget is aligned with the goals outlined in the District Improvement Plan, the 3-year strategic plan that Mr. Hayes referred to. It also reflects the needs of the students, the staff, and the buildings. This district exists solely for the purpose of educating its students, and so the district budget must reflect the services and programs that will address those specific needs. This year's budget focuses on continued support of both existing programs and also recommends limited requests for funding new initiatives that will move the district forward and out of the level 3 status. As was the case last year, the district is fully aware of the dire need to balance its needs with the realities of the town's fiscal health and citizens' general needs and input. The administration listened intently to community concerns over the past year regarding physical needs for district buildings and grounds, improved delivery of services, technology, student opportunities, and extracurricular activities. The 3-year strategic plan describes how we will move the district forward by providing for a number of things, including student learning needs, including the physical environment, making it conducive to effective learning and teaching, adequate staffing in all the buildings, high-quality professional development for the staff, and a complete renewed commitment to the focus of the important work our students. Next year, the district's efforts will be committed to 6 major focus areas. First, safe, clean, well-maintained, effective learning environments. Secondly, rigorous academic programs that will be taught by highly qualified educators. Most importantly, for the educators, we need high-quality professional development for all staff. We need opportunities in art, music, athletics, civic engagement, field trips, and community service. We've included those. We've infused technology that will support the learning, communication, and operations in the district. And lastly, programs that will be addressing self-discovery, social emotional supports, and exploration of college and career paths. This past year, we have focused on laying a foundation. For example, in the current fiscal year, the school committee adopted the 3-year district improvement plan that clearly articulates visions, goals, and action plans for moving forward out of level 3 status. The position of Director of Academic Affairs was created and filled by the end of the calendar year. Custodial staffing at the high school was increased to address many years of neglect. The position of Supervisor of Buildings and Grounds was created and very recently filled. A school building needs committee was reestablished to address the future of the high school, as well as other building needs throughout the district. Funding was added to the budget to allow the district to participate in advanced placement programs, and new textbooks for this program were purchased. The district had excess and deficiency funds certified in the amount of $917,000, most of which has been appropriated for capital improvements. The district managed its budget in a way that allowed us to make the necessary technology upgrades, as well as other improvements across the district. These improvements include, and I think it's important for the community to know specifically what these are. We've purchased smart boards that will be integrated into classrooms throughout the entire district that will revolutionize the ability to teach effectively and efficiently. We have HP maker spaces and 3D printers on order for all the schools in the district. These will be housed in the libraries. We have school security systems being upgraded to keep the students safe and secure in all the schools. We also have training programs that go with those systems. The asbestos abatement projects that Mr. Hayes reported to you that started early this year at the high school, and it will continue throughout the summer. Bids which are currently being accepted to replace the leaking roof at the high school, because it's on the classroom wing of David Prouty, and it's caused us great concern this year. Funds have been approved to replace malfunctioning exterior doors at the high school as well. Additional funding has been put in place for textbooks and library books. The new software that Mr. Hayes described, ASOP, Naviance, School Dude, will all be implemented to improve the way that we manage various procedures as well as practices within the district. Funds have been allocated for a VoIP telephone system throughout the district. Hundreds of Chromebooks with charging carts will be utilized in all schools, and these will interact with the smart boards being purchased as well as assist with the standardized state testing. There will be an addition of iPad minis for grades K to 2 for our youngest students to make their learning more interactive. iPad Pros will be added to grades 9 to 12 for music and arts programs. We've purchased Cubelets for grades 1 to 8. These are robotic programming kits for learning in the younger grades that will be used in conjunction with the STEM classes, and they'll be the foundation of our new program and robotics. Robotic kits for all grade levels will be provided for competitions in each of the schools. That's what we did this year. As we look to the future, fiscal 17 will include an affordable operating budget presented to both towns for the second year in a row, a budget that will fund the goals and initiatives included in that 3-year district improvement plan, additional funding for arts, music, and athletics. An additional 5 positions have been added. There will be increases in funding for building maintenance and repair, additional funding for continued curriculum renewal throughout the district, and plans are in place, as you've already heard, to pay off the entire deficit by August of 2017. As you can see, we have accomplished much in the past year and a half, but there is still much work left to do. So we ask for your continued support. It is our hope that this budget illuminates where we have been, where we are now, and where we must go in the future to serve our students. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, are you ready for the vote? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none, and the chair declares that passed by a unanimous vote. Before we get to Article 7, one brief interlude, with my apologies to Mary Brainey, the chair of the Finance Committee. We need 2 more Finance Committee members. We've been short for a number of months right now. If any of you are interested in public service, this is the place to start on the Finance Committee. It's a learn-as-you-go process with plenty of materials to help you, and you make a great contribution for the town. If any of you are interested, please contact the town administrator and let him know of your interest. Article 7. Article 7 is the Bay Path Regional Technical School District budget. This consists of an appropriation for the operating assessment of $991,365, transportation assessment of $64,790, debt buy-in assessment $34,130, capital debt assessment $140,445, and the capital debt assessment account of $2,718. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 7 as printed in the warrant. The motion is made by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Gary Woodbury. Requires a majority vote. Finance Committee, please.
So I will also take a minute to sort of reinforce what the moderator just said. We really would need 2 more people. We have 11 slots and only 9 filled. So please, if you're interested, it's a wonderful way to learn the intricacies of the government. And one of the intricacies is that we in fact have 2 school systems, we belong to two school districts, the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District and the Southern Worcester County, which is known, which we call the Bay Path School. And I want to remind everyone of that. The students who go to Bay Path, this budget that we are voting for them is not tuitioning out. We'll come a little later to a couple of articles where we tuition out students to schools because neither Prouty nor Bay Path provides a couple of specific programs, and you'll see how expensive those are. So the fact that we have two school districts is a huge economic savings and a huge advantage to our students. And the Finance Committee recommends approval of the Bay Path budget.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see no opposition, and the motion carries by unanimous vote. Article 8. Article 8 is an article to fund tuition and transportation to the Smith Regional Agricultural High School. It's one of the tuition-out schools that Mary just referred to. The motion I have is I move to waive reading and approve Article 8 as printed in the warrant. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Gary Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Questions or comments? Yes, sir.
First, let me extend my personal congratulations to you, Mr. Moderator, on your fine service to this community. I had the privilege of serving with you on the committee that created our Town Governmental Act, which sets our current form of government, and we are one of the best-run communities as a result of your efforts. So my personal thanks on that. The next three, the current article and the next two represent over $100,000 that, yes, we have no choice but to pay, but this represents an unfunded mandate from the state, which, if was present in the school budget, would allow them to hire 2 or 3 teachers. I know that the administrator and the select board have been working diligently to try and work with other communities to address this issue. I wanted to express my concern over this increasing cost, not only to this community, but to several others, seeing a representative, one of our state reps is present, and would ask the administrator if there's been any progress on that front.
Thank you, Mr. Shermuth. Mr. Gaudette.
Good evening, Adam Gaudette, Town Administrator. We filed a bill for the second time back in January, and it's still in committee, being reviewed by the Joint Committee of Education. So our hope, at best, it would come out of committee in June and get to the floor for a vote. If not, we'll file it again in January.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? I see one in opposition. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Article 9. Article 9 is a tuition and transportation request with regard to Tantascwa Regional High School. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 9 as printed in the warrant. Requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Gary Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, ready for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none in opposition, and the motion carries by unanimous vote. Article 10. Article 10 is a tuition and transportation article with respect to the Norfolk County Regional Agricultural High School. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 10 as printed on the warrant. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Gary Woodbury. Requires a majority vote. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see no opposition, and the chair will declare that it's carried by unanimous vote. Article 11. Article 11 is the town budget. It takes up the back of the book that you got. It details the expenses that the town has for the year, how it receives its revenue, and how it's spent, and on what departments it's spent on. The total budget request is $8,732,513. The motion I have is I move to waive reading and approve Article 11 as printed on the warrant. Requires a majority vote. The motion is made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. The town administrator will gladly answer any questions you have on any aspect of the budget, and I will accept any questions or comments at this point after I get a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this budget, and we also want to acknowledge the hard work that all the department heads and town staff, the town administrator do in order to get the jobs done that need to be done with the funding that we give them.
Thank you. Questions or comments? You ready for the vote? It's only $8 million, $9 million. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see no opposition, and I think for the first time in my memory, the budget carries by unanimous vote. Article 12. Article 12 is the Water Department budget we vote on every year. We appropriate a sum of money, in this case $1,388,899, and that's paid for out of the receipts from the Water Department. It also authorizes capital expenditures and indirect costs, and authorizes the Water Commission to set the rates and fees for the coming year. Motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 12 as printed in the warrant. It requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Questions or comments? I see none. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none in opposition, and the chair will declare that is carried by a unanimous vote. Article 13. Article 13 is the Sewer Department. Same situation with the Sewer Department. We appropriate money, they pay it back out of the fees they receive from the users, and it authorizes indirect costs and authorizes the sewer commissioners to set the rates for the forthcoming year. Motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 13 as printed on the warrant. It's a majority vote required. Motion is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. Questions or comments on the Sewer Department budget? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none, and the chair will declare that is carried by a unanimous vote. Article 14. Article 14 involves Water Department capital projects to be paid for out of their retained earnings or their stabilization, or free cash account. This involves an expenditure for a cold storage building at the Meadow Well and a capital efficiency plan. Motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 14 as printed on the warrant. Requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none. The chair will declare that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 15. 15 is an article for the Sewer Department clarifiers upgrade capital project. Say that 3 times fast. Motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 15 as printed on the warrant. Requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Anybody have questions or comments on this particular article? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none in opposition. Chair will declare that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 16. Article 16 is a request for an appropriation of $88,000 for the sewer department's portion of the Main Street Traffic Improvement Project, and to be paid for, is approved by the Capital Improvements Planning Committee, be paid for from their retained earnings. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 16 as printed on the warrant. It requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Chris Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments on this? I see none. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none. The chair will declare that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 17. Article 17 is the annual capital expenditures article, which we fund from free cash. This year, the total funding, $442,735.90. And I can tell you that there are many, many, many more requests than can possibly be funded. But these are the ones which have been graded by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee and presented to the Town Administrator and the Select Board and presented to you for action. You can read what they're for. If you have questions, we'll take them after I go through the motion, which is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 17 as printed on the warrant. It's a majority vote required. Motion is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Questions or comments? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none. The chair will declare that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 18. Article 18 involves the Massasoit lot taking and other takings which are to be undertaken in conjunction with the traffic improvement plan for Main Street. The total appropriation requested is $206,529, and that will be funded from various accounts which are listed, partially funded by that and partially funded by taxes, and partially funded by an appropriation from the Land Acquisition Stabilization Account. Because we're appropriating some money from that account, this requires a 2/3 vote. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 18 as printed on the warrant. Motion is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Questions or comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Hicks.
What are UST apostrophe S? Thank you.
Are you satisfied? Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? The underground storage tanks, things you don't want on your property. Other questions or comments? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? I see no one in opposition. The chair will declare Article 18 is carried by a unanimous vote. Article 19. Article 19 is the Comprehensive Roads Project. This is a request to appropriate the sum of $19 million by means of a tax exclusion, an override exclusion, and it's also contingent upon successful passage at the town elections next Tuesday and the passage of certain special legislation which we will deal with in Article 20. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 19 as printed on the warrant. This money will ultimately be borrowed if this is approved. It'll be borrowed through bonds. Because we're borrowing, it requires a 2/3 vote. The motion I have is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Mr. Gaudet is here to answer any questions you have. He's given many talks on this already, and I think he sees roads in his sleep. But Mr. Gaudet, you have the floor if you would like it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I hope everyone has taken advantage of either coming to a public hearing, watching them on TV, reading the information that we have on our website, the flyer that was in the new leader, and a letter I wrote to the editor. In addition, as a handout tonight, you had the flyer that was in the new leader last week. My job, as directed by the Board of Selectmen, has been to try and get as much information to you folks as possible and everyone that shows up at the election next week to be able to make an informed decision about this project. So hopefully we've done that over the past 6 months. A couple things I want to just make sure everybody is aware of when they go to the ballot next week and tonight. As the moderator said, the article tonight, the first one here, Article 19, is to authorize us to borrow money. That requires a 2/3 vote. We will not be able to do that if the election article does not pass on Tuesday. So this article that you vote tonight, if you authorize us to borrow, is contingent upon an affirmative vote on Tuesday. Otherwise, we cannot move forward with this project. It's also contingent upon Article 20, as the moderator said, that would allow us to borrow up to 30 years for the project to keep our payments as small as possible. One of the things that you need to know when you go to the ballot on Tuesday, the dollar amount, the $19 million amount that we're talking about right now, is not going to be shown in the article, on the question on Tuesday. The way we draft questions, it comes right out of state law. The only thing we're allowed to do is change the name of the town and the name of the project. So when you go on Tuesday, there will be a question, question 1, the only question on the ballot, and I'll ask your permission to allow us to go beyond the limits of Proposition 2.5 for the purposes of this project. Okay, that's all the article, that's all the question's going to say. The dollar amount is right here, 19 million. Another thing you should know is there's nothing in the budget tonight that allows us to spend $1 of that 19 million. We haven't appropriated any of that. We're not going to do that until next year for the town meeting, annual town meeting next year for the following fiscal year of 2018, because we'll need time to plan, and we also want to soften the impact because we have 2 debt exclusions that will be coming off this year. One is the ladder truck, and one is the Sibley Farm purchase. Okay, so that'll take $300,000 off of your annual debt exclusion bill. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. There's information again on here that talks about the project, talks about limits of 2.5, why we're asking for a debt exclusion over the limits of 2.5, the approval process, and then the impact on the taxpayer as estimated, and then some charts and graphs on the back page. One of the things that you need to, again, understand is a debt exclusion. A debt exclusion is an override. I think you all need to understand that. A debt exclusion is an override. It's a temporary override. The word override, whether it's a debt exclusion or it's applied to the budget in terms of services, means that you're authorizing us to override the limits of 2.5, which means we're restricted to increasing the tax levy every year by 2.5%. A debt exclusion is an override. However, it's a temporary override. And what you're doing tonight is you'd be allowing us to borrow $19 million, have that payment every year for 30 years, be allowed to be paid for additional money from the tax levy if you vote for it on Tuesday. Okay? Again, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about the project. Steve Tyler, who's your Utilities and Facilities Superintendent, is here tonight as well. He was a big part of the presentations that we made over the past 6 months, the Board of Selectmen as well. Again, any questions, I'm here for you now. I will be here on Tuesday, the day of the election, all day, and I will be happy to answer any questions if you are confused at all, or if you have any questions beforehand, you feel free to email me over the weekend. I'll be happy to answer them on Monday, or call me. I want to make sure that everyone understands every aspect of this article and the question that you'll have on Tuesday. If you have any doubt, any question, I will provide as much factual information and give you hopefully the most amount of information that you have to make the decision. At the end of the day, it'll be your choice whether to vote yes or no. My job is to make sure you have that information that helps you make that decision. And I'm here now if anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Donald Clough. I live on 4 Crestview Drive, number 54. I've been a resident in the town of Spencer since 1947. I served on your Board of Assessors for 30 years. I'm totally saddened by the conditions of the roads in this town. I'm totally in favor of this project. I hope that a majority, or 2/3 of you agree with me, and we do pass it this evening. But I also want to mention that if this does happen, we've had several situations in past years where these types of articles have passed at the town meeting but have been not passed at the polls. And if you are in favor, you want to see this happen, you want to see these improvements in town, then I suggest that you contact all your friends, your relatives, your family, and get them to come and vote, because that's the only way it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clough. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Mr. Tyler. Mr. Tyler, would you come up, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Bob Serba, 23 Summit Street. Have you ever looked at a road tax? Well, like we have excise tax, okay? And excise tax has to be used for certain things. Why not a road tax? We've got something like 9,000 vehicles in town. What if we made this where everybody has skin in the game? If you drive a vehicle, you assess somebody a flat fee of, like, say, $100, okay? $100 for every vehicle on the road that's registered in your name. Now, that works out to about $900,000. A debt exclusion, I have no problem, and I agree, the roads are absolutely deplorable. I have no argument there. But a debt exclusion, you were originally asking for a $36 million override. Now we're talking about $19 million debt exclusion. $19 million debt exclusion leaves $17 million worth of work still to be done. So you do a debt exclusion for 30 years, okay, great. What about that $17 million backlog that we still have to pay for? This is, to me, I mean, it's got to be, I understand the reasoning for having it done, but it's kicking the can down the road again. You know, why not do a flat tax?
Mr. Gaudette.
Great question. I think...
I'm waiting for a great answer.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say the word tax, Bob, but I'll say it. We're basically looking at the tools that we're allowed to use now. There is not really a statute that allows us to do that. So that's number one. Yeah, we're very restricted in terms of different types of things that we can do. That's why a couple years ago, one of the things we did is we took advantage of the meals tax, if you recall that. There's also hotels tax. There's also Community Preservation Act, which some towns have. So there is not out there a statute that allows us to do what you're saying. I think it's a very creative idea. Unfortunately, we're only able to use the tools that we have with us now. Just for those of you who may not have come to the public hearings, the Board of Selectmen did first put out there a $34 million override. And that $34 million is what our estimated backlog is for our total road system to bring everything up to a level standard that we think is acceptable. Based on the feedback that we received at the 6 or so public hearings, that number just seemed too high for people. So we had a couple of different options. One was a $19 million option. A third was the $10 million option. The $10 million option really didn't get us much. So that's why the Board of Selectmen chose the $19 million. The difference between the override, which is permanent, and then the debt exclusion, which is temporary, although 30 years might as well be permanent. But the difference there, and the Board of Selectmen did put that because we agree with a lot of the people that feel the same way, that we need more than $19 million. In addition to that, we'll have other roads to repair because we're going to have $15 million that's not repaired. In addition to that, road system's not going away. It's always something we're going to have to deal with. So some towns do have large budgets for road repairs, and they've done them through overrides or capital stabilization overrides, which is what we originally proposed. But again, the feedback that we received from the people that came to the public hearing, there was very strong opposition to the override and very strong support for a debt exclusion because they wanted us to have this product to be finite in nature, basically have a beginning and have an end. And at the end of the 30 years, we come back and we regroup and we'll see what we're going to go. There wasn't as much support as the Board of Selectmen may have thought when they originally proposed the $34 million override, that we would be able to have that freedom or that flexibility that once the project was done, we would continue to have that money in our budget. Unfortunately, if this passes in 30 years, the folks in this town are going to have to come back and talk about this project again, or some form of project.
And this money can only be used specifically for the roads, correct?
So what you're doing with this article right now is authorizing us to borrow $19 million specifically for roads. And you can see the language that's in there. It comes from bond counsel. They recommend the specific language in 19, and then the next article, it refers to certain statutes, refers to different types of construction, soft costs like engineering and other. That's the only thing we'll be able to spend any of that $19 million on is what's listed in that article. So we can't buy cars, fire trucks, or anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Thank you, Mr. Serba. Yes, sir, Mr. Shemuth. And you'll state your address as Dale Street, I hope.
6 Dale Street, yes, Mr. Moderator. Two questions. First, if the voters approve this money, as long as we continue to have an understaffed and underfunded highway department, you'll spend a lot of money to bring a bunch of roads up to condition, have all these other roads, as the gentleman before stated, that are still not where they should be, but you'll have staffing that won't allow you to keep up with your regular maintenance. So what plans do you or the board have to address in the near future bringing the highway department, both staffing and expenses, back up where they need to be, and so that when we go forward, we don't continually have the perpetual problem with the roads we all already have?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Bill, and others, that we definitely could use more staff. I don't think it's any secret. Obviously, everybody knows the staff and the challenges we've had with services over the last couple of years. So as far as planning, we're pretty much fixed with the revenues that we have other than Proposition 2.5. So outside of this project, in terms of bringing services or staffing levels up, the Board of Selectmen are looking at different creative ideas. One of the things that we're exploring is solar on our landfill, selling some of the properties we have in town and other. But we understand that we live in a challenging revenue structure, and that's just the way it is. So we don't have any great ideas in terms of getting staff levels from, say, 8 highway workers to 15. The work that we're proposing as part of this project is going to be done mostly by private contractors. Okay, that's no secret. We have, our staff is mainly maintenance staff. They do have the capability to do construction projects, and we will do some construction projects, but we're very limited in the amount of construction projects that we can do with our staff because of all the other assignments that we have: plowing, maintaining catch basins, mowing parks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our hope is that with the money that we could get from this project, bring the roads up to a certain level, that we'd be able to use our Chapter 90 money, that's the grant money that we receive every year from the state, and use that to maintain the roads that we have. Through the presentations that we made, we tried to put it out there and try to get everyone to understand the better road conditions, the cheaper it is to maintain them. So if we have a road that's on a scale of 1 to 10 is at a 9, we're doing crack sealing and other minimal improvements. If you have a road on a scale of 1 to 10 that's at a 3, we're doing major patching, major drainage repairs, and they become more costly. So our hope is that if we get the overall conditions of our roads up to a level of standard that is what we're shooting for, then we would hope that our Chapter 90 and the money that we get from the state and the other town money that we have within our budget is enough to maintain them, or at least make them last as long as possible.
Any other questions or comments? Are you ready for the vote? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see one in opposition. The chair will declare that as carried by a vote of 140 to 1, two-thirds vote having been attained. 139 to 2, two-thirds vote having been attained. Article 19 passes. Article 20. Article 20 is an authorization to allow the selectmen to petition the general court, that's the legislature, for a special act to allow us to pay out the sums that we borrow for this road project over a 30-year period. State law is a myriad of different time spans. You are allowed so many years to pay back for paving roads, so many years for sidewalks, and it gets very confusing. They're all different time periods. It makes planning on our end for such a project almost impossible. This would allow, with the help of our legislative delegation, would allow us to spread this thing out evenly over a 30-year period. Motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 20 as printed in the warrant. It requires a majority vote. Motion is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none in opposition. The chair declares that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 21. Article 21 is to see if the town will accept a gift of real estate which is located on West Main Street in Spencer, next to the gas station, across from the Spencer Savings Bank. It is parcel 1-1 on map R29 of the assessors. It's a small triangular parcel with about 30 feet of frontage to a depth of a couple hundred feet. The owners have no use for it. They want to know if they can turn it over to the town. If you want to accept that, it requires a 2/3 vote. I move to waive the reading and approve Article 21 as printed in the warrant. That motion is by Mr. Gary Woodbury, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Questions or comments? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none in opposition. The chair declares that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 22. Article 22 is a bylaw amendment with regard to Article 6, Streets and Highways, concerning placing obstacles and obstructions in sidewalks, as is printed in the warrant. I move to waive the reading and approve Article 22 as printed in the warrant. Requires a majority vote. Motion is by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see none in opposition. The chair will declare that is carried by unanimous vote. Article 23. Article 23 is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment concerning fences and hedges. You've been given a handout on that. This is being proposed by the Planning Board. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 23 as printed in the warrant. Motion is by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. It's a 2/3 vote required because it's a zoning amendment. Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Nordquist.
Kurt Nordquist, Gale Drive. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tyler. I happen to see on this Article 6, fences and hedges, he said no person shall cause direct fence, walls, shrubbery, hedges, stone walls, or anything. And on the bottom, it says that the highway superintendent may require an applicant at the applicant's expense to hire a professional land surveyor. And that's the question I have. It doesn't pertain to me, but it could pertain to you. If you want to put up a fence on your property, this goes back when our first town administrator was here. Same language, it got defeated. So if you put up a fence or something and the highway superintendents don't like it or doesn't think, he's going to have you, he's going to make sure you get a highway, we call land surveyor. They're not cheap, a couple of $1,000 because you want to put up a stone wall or something. We used to have a fence viewer to come out for the fences, not the stone walls. My question is there still a fence viewer in this town? Mr. Moderator.
I have no idea, to be honest with you. Fence viewers go back to colonial times and settle disputes over boundaries and wandering pigs. We may still have one.
Well, that was in the budget. I've been here 40 years, and it was always been there. I didn't see it this year, but that's why I'm asking. But this is going to cause you trouble, because if, like I say, I don't want to rehash it, you have to have a land surveyor come in and do your property. The other question would be...
Excuse me, Mr. Nordquist, I've just been advised by the town clerk that we do in fact have a fence viewer, Mr. Robert Dewan. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's good. Thank you, town clerk. Somebody's on the ball. What my other thing is, if you're going to put up a fence or something like this, there is a plot plan that you have when you own your property. So that could take care of any boundary markers. Everybody who owns a property has a plot plan, and that would take care of the problem. I don't like the idea of having this land surveyor. So I'd like to have some discussion on it, but I would make an amendment that we scratch that word land surveyor to protect the people who are trying to do something to enhance their property.
Are you proposing an amendment to that, Mr. Nordquist?
Yes, sir.
Here is a motion for you and a pen.
If you got the paper, I got the pen.
The reason we have the language land surveyor in there is for the protection of people. The planning board, the zoning board, the building inspector, their job is to review plans, permits, applications for different things, whether it's a new house, a shed, a pool, a gas station, what have you. A lot of those things, at times, potentially, will impact neighbors. And one of the things that we do as part of those processes is have plans submitted by land surveyors or stamped by land surveyor to determine where the property line is, so things are not being built on someone else's property. In addition to that, we have, if you're familiar with zoning, we have setback requirements. And we want to make sure those things are outside of the setback. We'd hate to have someone come in, build a fence or a shed or a garage or whatever, be within the setback, have a neighbor complain, and then they have to tear it down. So the reason we have that language in there is for the protection of not only the neighbors, but also the protection of the applicant, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to, and they're not going to have any fallout after the fact if they did something that was inappropriate or outside the realm of zoning. So what you have in this language here is considered standard operating procedure, if you will, by the building department, by the planning department, and the zoning department. Plot plans are great, but they're not stamped by a land surveyor. They're stamped right on there. It says this does not certify that these lines are accurate. It says it right on the plot plan. Okay? Plot plans are great, but it's just usually for bank purposes. Mortgage inspection plans, they're also called. A true inspection plan or a true plot plan is one that's been surveyed, and it's for the purposes of protecting the applicant and the neighbor. So I would encourage you to not vote for the amendment and keep the language in there. In some cases, it may be. Those, and what you're talking about is a mortgage inspection plan. But it's, yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so what you may be talking about, what we're talking about, or what we're requesting. Where a surveyor does come out, they're going to locate, I think they have to locate a minimum of 2 bounds. So one could be a Worcester County highway bound, one could be an iron pipe in the ground, and one could be a stone wall. Okay, so right, so what they'll do is they'll come out and they'll physically locate, they'll physically survey and locate those items. That's not correct. Most people, not everyone has it. But what you're talking about is what we're talking about. And we think it's, not that it's a minor expense, it's less than the expense of having to tear something down if it's inappropriate. So.
All right, now what we have, hold on a second. What we have first of all is we have an amendment. And I want to put that on the floor so the discussion addresses the amendment in addition to the rest of the article. The amendment made by Mr. Nordquist and seconded by, I can't read the name, I'm sorry. is that we remove the words professional land surveyor from, and you have section 6.6 here, Mr. Nordquist. I'm going to tie in with the bylaw, though, and that is actually section 6.61B, which talks about the professional land surveyor. That's the B paragraph. Is that the one you want to delete it from? So the article, the amendment being proposed is to remove the word professional land surveyor from paragraph B on the first page of the handout that you have here. All right, now we can continue the discussion, and then we'll vote on the amendment and then on the article. Yes, sir.
Mike Malone, 128 Mechanic Street. I just have a question regarding grandfather clause on this. I imagine my existing fence is somehow grandfathered, but what if I were to redo the fence? I have a chain link fence. Would I have to go through the whole process? And my house sits about 5 feet from the sidewalk, so a fence 3 feet back. Yeah. So that's one of the. That's the question on that.
Question is there a grandfather clause? Mr. Tyler, someone from the planning board?
Zoning is current as it is today. So if you adopt this today, anything before there is grandfathered in.
How about if I have to repair the fence?
If you tear down your fence, if you tear it down completely and you apply for a new permit.
If I take a chain link and replace it with a plastic fence, I basically.
Right. So that'll be a building inspector question, but I imagine if you were going to reconstruct in the same place, he's not going to require you to, go through this process because you're just replacing in kind, right? Is that what you're saying?
And the building inspector, who is the zoning enforcement
Correct.
officer, is the be-all, end-all of this.
Under the statute that we fall under, that we have adopted and follow, the building inspector is the zoning enforcement officer for this community. So the planning board goes through the process of reviewing their zoning bylaws. They hold public hearings if they propose to make any changes. They put forth the articles, and then it's a 2/3 vote to change. Once it goes into effect, the building inspector, he's the one who's in charge of the zoning.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think exactly what that guy said.
Rodney Foisey, 12 Rustic Lane, Spencer, Mass. I just want to ask a question. If a fence is torn down on a piece of property and going to be reconstructed, is there a grandfather clause to reconstruct the fence in the same location as it was?
Yes.
For how long a period of time do you have? Is it a 2-year period? Like if you have a grandfather lot?
Mr. Foisey, into the mic, please, so everyone can hear
If
you.
you have a grandfathered lot and you tear a house down, you have 2 years to rebuild, and then if it's non-conforming, it'll go back into the zoning of the time, and you would lose the lot. And I'm asking the same question on a fence. Do you have the 2-year period to reconstruct the fence if you tear it down?
Yes. So for example, if you have a commercial business and it's located in a residential district and you stop that commercial business for more than 2 years, you lose your grandfathering. So the same thing is with a structure. If I have a structure and it's located at 10 feet from the property line and it says, the zoning says a minimum of 20, if I tear it down, I'm not allowed to go back to 10 after 2 years. Okay.
Mr. Sherman, Mr. Tyler first, please, Mr. Sherman. He's been trying to get up here for a while.
Stephen Tyler, Highway Superintendent. First, I'd like to clarify a couple of what I think are misunderstandings. First, I'd like to clarify what I think are a few misunderstandings. The reason why this actually was brought forward to the planning board by my office, and there was an issue on the corner of Wilson Street and Highland where there's a fence that's built right to the corner where you can't see unless you pull up past the fence and you stick the nose of your vehicle out into oncoming traffic. And so you're looking to the right and you're pulling out in front of the traffic coming from the left. We have had accidents there. And I don't know what the disposition, they've appealed those in court. I haven't found out what the findings are, but basically it's putting people's lives at risk. They're putting their cars out into the road so they can see past the fence. So it's that type of situation that this was intended to be able to address, because right now we don't have any form of permitting or review process. That is a fence that's grandfathered, it's there. People have complained to this office. There's nothing that I can currently do about it. And when this passes, there's nothing I can do about that fence. The objective is to try to prevent fences of that nature of being erected to begin with. It's not to make everyone pay for a survey of every property for every fence. Basically, when you look at it, if there's a clear understanding of where the property lines, there's not going to be a problem. The language that talks about if we ask for the survey, that's where if it's in dispute. And the concerns where it's going to be in dispute is in a situation like what I just described, where safety is of a concern and something is sticking in, say, a line of the sight of a driver and affects safety of the public. So that is the true intent of this change to the bylaws, and it's worded with the intention of implementing it in just that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Mr. Sherman.
Through you to the administrator, does it make any difference whether one is on a public road or a private road in regard to the grandfathering provisions?
Mr. Goddard, are you prepared to answer that, or do you want more authority? You're wearing a lot of hats tonight.
Yes.
The answer is yes, Mr. Sherman.
No. Yes, as in if it's a public or private way, it doesn't matter. Okay? The idea is that from a zoning standpoint, zoning regulates the lot. Okay, so the lot is within the town of Spencer. It's going to be regulated under zoning, zoning enforcement officer, the building inspector.
Mr. Woodbury.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, thank you. I would like to, I think we ought to pass over this article. I'll tell you why. There's a couple of good points that Ralph brought up with his plot plan. The other one I don't like in the question, the feedback I got was you can only have a 4-foot high fence. 4 foot high, a dog is going to go over. And that's part of the other question. So I think this article should be passed over, brought back to the next town meeting with more specifics about this. And I've been uncomfortable with this, and those are the questions I wanted answered. Thank you.
Mr. Hayes.
Mr. Moderator, it would seem to me that we're attempting to write a bylaw, if what I heard was correctly from Mr. Tyler, to take care of one problem. If in fact we have a fence viewer, why wouldn't he be part of the process when someone comes in to get a permit, send the fence viewer out there? If there's an issue, then have it brought to the building inspector. I think we've got the necessary tools in place, just perhaps maybe the fence viewer isn't in the loop.
Mr. Gaudet.
There's nothing in the bylaws now that would allow even the fence viewer to then refer it over to the building inspector, and that's what we're trying to implement.
It's academic.
It's the same thing as why we have a harbor master. Things that happen, you know, in towns, and they're in our bylaws and in our government. And
sir, in the back.
Mike Toomey, Main Street, Ash Street. Got a question. Mike Toomey on Ash Street. I got a question on why, in the case of something like the public roads not being able to be used because you can't see around them, why would that not fall under public nuisance and public safety? I mean, we already have existing laws for that.
The question you have here is whether or not you want to accept this particular article. You may not want to accept it because you think it should be a public nuisance question, But,
I
you
think
know,
it's that. I don't think we have
remember
enough
that from law
information on
school.
it.
You state your point of order. You defeat the article is how you do it. Or we can have the article withdrawn. If you want to withdraw the motion and withdraw the amendment, and then make a motion to pass it over, I'll accept that motion to pass it over. Otherwise, we're going to act on this motion which is on the floor. Mr. Serba.
Mr. Moderator, maybe it's just me, but it seems that there's some folks here that really want to see this pass. I was a business owner a few years ago. We owed Mad Max Video when this signed bylaw came through, and everybody passed it, and everybody thought it was a great idea, and it screwed every business owner in the town. And Al the Town's here tonight. Him and I served on that committee for almost 2 years trying to revise that. So the bylaws that are done sometimes are not always in the best efforts of what's best for the town. I agree with Mr. Norquist, and I agree with Mr. Woodbury. This needs to be passed over and we take it up again at another time. Because trust me, we went around and around with the planning board, and the planning board, when we came down to a vote, and I'll never forget Shirley Shiver, she said, well, my problem with this is, she said, there was no citizens on this committee. And I said, well, you were all invited to be on part of the board. She said, oh, no, we weren't. And Karen Cullen, your predecessor, leaned over at Shirley Shiver and she said, yes, you were. So trust me, it's not always what you think it's going to be, and it's not always in the best interest. And I agree with you, Kurt.
All right, now, let's hold on a second. Let's get a little clarification here. First of all, the motion I have on this article was made by Mr. Stevens. And that motion was amended. And now we have talk of passing over the article. If the article is defeated, a zoning article is defeated, I believe we have a 2-year wait on this thing before we can come back with the article again. So my suggestion to this meeting is that we vote on the amendment. Do you want to amend the article to delete the reference to the professional land surveyor? And yes or no, you can vote on that. That just allows that amendment in. And then, if the person making the motion, which is Mr. Stevens, wants to withdraw his motion and make a motion to pass over the article, I will accept the motion to pass over the article. So these are options that you have. Mr. Nordquist.
Kurt Nordquist, as the person who...
Speak into the mic, please.
Kurt Nordquist, who made the motion, I'm going to ask it be passed over at this time.
So are you withdrawing your motion
Yes,
to
I
amend?
am. Withdraw my motion, I'm sorry, Mr.
Now,
Chairman.
all right, now, Mr. Stevens, it's your motion.
Motion to pass over.
Mr. Stevens is withdrawing his motion in favor of this article and moving to pass over it. Is there a second? There is a second. So now the motion we have on the floor, irrespective of all the talk we've had about bushes and trees and cars and roads, is do you want to pass over this article and try again later? And I'm going to cut off discussion at this point because I think we've heard enough. All those in favor of passing over this motion, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? And this is overwhelmingly passed over. The chair declares that the article is passed over by a majority vote. Thank you. Article 24. Article 24 calls for deleting Section 4 in the zoning bylaw and replacing it with a new article, which you have. In the general bylaws, concerning driveway cuts and drainage, there's a handout on this which was given to you. The motion I have is I move to waive the reading and approve Article 24 as printed on the warrant. Requires a majority vote. The motion is by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Chris Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
The Finance Committee recommends approval.
Finance Committee recommends approval on Article 24. Questions or comments? Mr. Nordquist.
Kurt Nordquist again on Article 24, Section 4.2, under Section 4. and it states about driveways and roads, and it has mass.com FHWA AASTO design standards. Correct? And this is a vague word. I'd like to have something explained to us. So if you have a driveway or something, you have to meet the state standards for having signs up in the air on the roadway. I mean, this is red tape. It's all about red tape. So I'd like to have somebody talk about it and let me know what's going on.
So, all right, Mr. Nordquist, so that's the end of your comment? You're all set on that?
I'm just asking what those words stand for and
Right,
what
so,
they're for.
well, we've got a debate here. So you want to know what that is? We'll try to get you an answer. You want to know what, Mr. Tyler?
Stephen Tyler, Spencer Highway Superintendent. The acronyms in 4.2, AASHTO, is American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. The abbreviation, this next abbreviation, FHWA, is Federal Highway Administration, and the third one is Mass DOT. This does not require review of any of those agencies. This is just referring to standards that are already put into place by those agencies that tell you how to design in situations for safety. And I've seen situations in the past in other cities and towns where they've had bylaws that didn't refer to design standards such as this, and then people tried to make up their own design standards on how to determine those safety requirements. These are standards. Anyone that's a civil engineer or a transportation engineer knows what they are, knows how to refer to them. They're not complicated for them. It's not any additional review. It's just an intent to put the burden on the person that develops the property to pick a safe location. We have had many instances where people just place a driveway, and then after the fact they find out that it's a hazardous location, whether it be by the original builder or just a homeowner that just really doesn't know or think about those things. So we're just pointing this out up front so that they think about safety when they're first designing their lot. The other elements that are in this driveway and curb cut are essential to the roads project. A lot of the problems that we have with our roads are driveways coming in unpermitted and causing damage when they pull in off and on the road, either through the beginning of the construction or improperly building their driveways. This doesn't change what our driveway requirements are. It helps us on enforceability. In situations where we've had people that aren't following the current requirements, we're not having very good support in the housing court. And we need to basically put our requirements in a stronger position by having them in a bylaw. So we've converted what the current driveway standards that are administered through my office and converted them into the Section 4 of the general bylaws, which currently only just have a vague reference that say you need written permission from my office. That's still acceptable for us to develop the standards that we have, but this helps clarify and address the issues that we've had encountered with regard to safety and deterioration of our roads by this type of construction. Thank you.
Mr. Nordquist, I think that the answer to your question is that we're adopting standards much as we are with the state building code. We're adopting state standards, and you now know what all these acronyms are. Is there anybody else?
Mr. Moderator.
Wait a second. Yeah. Mr. Woodbury.
Once again, I apologize, but listen, this is very important. You just sat here tonight, $19 million, that fast. This is going to protect your investment. Go by some of the driveways where the water is going underneath the road, making it worse. This is a good one. I recommend you vote for this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Mr. Nordquist, have a seat, please, or step back.
Hi, just very quickly, Mike Malone, 128 Mechanic Street. Again, question on grandfathering on this. If I have my driveway torn up and completely repaved, does it have to go through a review? No?
Mr. Tyler?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. You're going to need a permit, but you're not going to have to relocate your driveway.
There you go.
And
Mr. Nordquist-
and that applies right now under the current bylaw.
Mr. Nordquist, last bite at the apple.
What it says here, the installation are required of safety signage be located on private roads and private property. What Mr. Woodbury talked about the downtown, I don't think this has anything to do with it. Private roads and private property should be the responsibility of the applicant or property owner approved by the Spencer Highway. So this is on private property and on private roads. This is what I'm trying to say. They put these words in there. It's a general thing, but it's going to come back to bite you. So if you want to vote for this, but it's some vague questions in here, and you really ought to think about it before you vote it. Thank you.
Are we ready for the vote? All right. All those in favor, 2/3 vote required. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? All right. The chair will declare that this has been carried by a vote of 100 to 5. 2/3 majority having been carried, the article is passed. Article 26, the last article, and thank God we get to talk about tattoo parlors instead of curb cuts. Article 26 is a proposal to amend a section of the zoning bylaws with regard to permits required for tattoo parlors, where you have to get a permit from the Board of Health and you have to get a permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So there's two things involved, and the intent here, from what I understand, is to reverse the order so that you're not spending money getting your permit on one and still waiting approval on something else which could upset you. So the motion that I have. Article 25, okay, all right. Okay, sorry to tell you, we got to delay tattoos for a minute here. Article 25 is the same one we just talked about before, except it moves that article into the zoning bylaws as opposed to the general bylaws. So I'm just going to ask you to, all those in favor of Article 25, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? Thank you. The chair will declare a vote of 105 to 5. 2/3 carry. Article 25 passes. Now we will talk about tattoo parlors. Motion I have on the tattoo parlors is to waive the reading and approve Article 26 as printed in the warrant. It's a zoning amendment, requires a 2/3 vote. Motion is by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Woodbury. Finance Committee, please.
The Finance Committee defers to the recommendation of the sponsor of the article.
Finance Committee defers, wants nothing to do with tattoos. Questions or comments? Really not changing anything, just reversing the order here. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I see one in opposition. Declare that motion as carried by 105 to 1. Chair will accept the motion to dissolve the meeting. Seconded. I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Good night, and for the last time, thank you and be well.